bingo pole. तुम को बोलो चले फोटो खींचा लो फोटो अरे
It's okay.
Just जा रहे हैं। उल्लू का करना
Guarda la lavanda. Meni je tako korak kad
Vem, stop.
Ginawa man pa sila. Hindi ko na nagdala.
when you read the books that you've got, then you can go
It's
She's like, no, I just took it to have it. Then we missed a single like, oh, what's that like?
He's inspired.
developmental economics.
Apa? Itu kan? वो तो तुम लोग गोल वाला कॉमन तो खरीदे हो ना वो so today Oi? Não volta com o meu.
Quando é Actually, we could go through here. This would be just interesting. So there's a divinity school here.
Enjoy yourself. What are you looking for, Joe? Right. Great. Franny, stand nicely. Feet down.
And then the rest of these stuff and that's what getting the shots. But American is actually closer to the traditional from
Тогда это будет второй раз.
Ну давай, мы можем пройдем. ऐसे निकलना
Quite early. Liam.
That's what HR's there. Yeah. They also work. Yes, they're there to keep the grievances, but they're there to also be on the side of the company. Yeah. Implement those grievances. Actually, Exeter's on the corner. We can't see it from here, I think.
Здание.
standing in one side. Woman doesn't do.
ये पूरी
in Narnia. So you can see how C.S. Lewis was inspired by this beautiful city. And his best friend, so he was a professor here for about 30 years, and for all of that time, his best friend was another professor of English literature, and they would go around the city together, mainly to the pubs, chatting about Narnia. And this best friend is now getting
undergraduates here. What you have are 84 non-teaching fellows, all of whom are engaged in further research, advanced study, all of whom sit on the governing body of the college itself. Famous former fellows include Christopher Wren, the architect, who designed that sundial there in the top left-hand corner. That was his gift to his alma mater. So incredibly accurate. The sun is shining. Another fellow here was T.E. Lawrence, Lawrence of Arabia, who grew up in Oxford, was one of the educators. A house he grew up in 2 Colston Road in North Oxford was recently on the market, asking the price £2.9 million, and included in the back garden a bungalow that Lawrence's father built for him to give him a bit of peace and quiet in which to conduct his studies. So he was a pupil at Oxford High School for George Street. His undergraduate studies took place in June.
By the start of the 20th century, there were over 1 million books, and they ran out of space to store the books above ground. So what they did is they started to dig and find the ground, and they dug back.
So Radcliffe Camera is top of the room, and it's known to tell us about
Undergraduate still has to be 14. We're right in the centre here, and that's the Radcliffe campus.
Personally, I do think it's O sea, si la saco así que se ve todo el edificio, veo la mitad de la vista.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Deal. Sounds funny.
Pizza gitu.
London. And all three of them are taken from chains from London, where they're imprisoned.
Green is tall, got it.
Love it. हम लोग चलो आगे से मैं यू टर्न लेके आता हूँ।
바로 공항으로 가서
चाहो तो छोटू को भेज दो यहीं, तुम भी पूछ लो उन्हें आना है।
Oh yeah.
You saw that second bit?
They just
And I'm like, I'm not doing it. So I sent her a picture and I walked into the picture and I was like, where? This is not my daughter. I straight up told her, yeah, I don't know who did that or something. Like it was like as if when the police did it. I was like, what? I don't know. She was
And is it said that? Not as many
Well, I got.
Exploitation of the winner was that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I said, if you need anything, let me know.
gente vai sempre para lá.
Flaskan först när man i ett andra som är bara så färd.
Vad gör mer?
Hazel lifted him having about 5 times. ha dicho, está muy bueno, muchas gracias.
And then when I wanted them, I just they could fly in and fly back out. The barbecues, they get stuck. How about we put it in the
That's how my day's starting, Carl.
Yeah, bye bye.